welcome to Homeside Chats. This is Andrea French, Executive Director for TAG, Transportation Advocacy Group. For today's episode, we're joined by Brazoria County Judge Matt Sebesta. Welcome, Judge.
Thanks, Andrea. Glad to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate all of your fantastic sponsors for sponsoring this event today and the great membership of TAG.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We know county judges these days are extra busy. You're always busy, but now we have an additional layer of activity. So let's start off, just walk us through the onset of COVID for Brazoria County and kind of to where we are now, and maybe what things looked like in the early days, what's been learned, how have you adapted? And how are we today in this moment for Brazoria County?
It's been an interesting ride. And I learned very early on, do not set your feet in concrete because you're going to get knocked over. We've had to be very flexible, and we're learning new things every day. This is I believe a once in a lifetime experience. And we're just having to adapt daily as things nationwide, worldwide, statewide change, and the reporting changes and those type of things. It has been an ever evolving situation. Our first couple of recorded cases were in late March, about the third week of March.
Right.
Both of those cases emanated from the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Okay.
And we were seeing just a few cases early on, and we will probably today go over 6,000 cases countywide, not including the cases in our prisons. So we have been on a pretty steady clip. And, we're part of a large region centered around Harris County.
Mm-hmm.
We are not Harris County. Each one of the counties are facing, in our 13 county region, are facing different challenges, and we're all set up a little bit differently. So some of our reporting is a little bit different.
Right.
Just because, Brazoria County doesn't have a countywide hospital district. So we don't have as good a handle on some of the overall testing that's been done because we do not test in Brazoria County as far as the health department. It's being done by private labs and hospitals and the Texas military and some clinics and that type of thing. So it's a little bit different here in Brazoria County than it is in some of our neighboring counties.
Right. And that's really interesting. And I appreciate you pointing that out. I think we know that, but we really don't know that and what that means to have every county has just a different structure, different capabilities. And quite frankly, then that changes the information that you're able to receive and disseminate on a regular basis. So what has that been like? And what have you, as I say, adjusted your sails accordingly, perhaps on the hour in some cases in the beginning? What have you learned and what's been instructive kind of moving forward for kind of wrangling this and maybe even beyond COVID? What are some of the needs that you found that you have for the county?
Well, the main thing we've got is communications. Right. That is the number one thing. And so we have, as the county, a pretty heavy social media presence.
Right.
And of course, people are always hungry for information. That is the one constant, especially when we have a situation, whether it's a hurricane, a flood, a pandemic.
Right.
People are hungry for information, and the information that we're putting out is a lot of the same information that's coming out through the region, the state,
right,
feds, worldwide. And that is the basics of how to slow the spread of this disease.
Right.
And the message is the same. Don't congregate outside your household. Wear your mask, wash your hands, minimize your trips, and people are hungry. They want to know more and more and more and more. And those are the basic tenets that people need
Right.
to, it needs to stick with them, and they need to practice day in, day out, because it only takes one little slip
Right.
and they can introduce this virus into their household.
Right.
So
Yeah.
but people want more and more information, and there's not a lot of more information that we can give them. It's those basic steps. So
Right. I think people want information and then but it's not the information that they really want to hear. Right. I mean, well, no, maybe it's not quite as bad or, but that's a very interesting way to frame that discussion, to say there's a lot out there, but it's basic. It's really basic.
it really is. And I will get a lot of private messages, and I have to tell people I'm a county judge and I'm an engineer. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on social media. And people want you to play doctor on social media.
Right.
And it's just, it's a little bit frustrating to folks, because it is an uncertain time that we are going through. And when people, when there are times of uncertainty, that's when emotions come into play, and
Right.
people are scared. And I try to remind people, just you always need to keep your common sense about you, and be smart. Don't be scared. Just be
Right.
smart and use your common sense.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's layers of uncertainty, right? So there's a normal amount of uncertainty that we're used to in our lives, and this just adds layers upon layers. And so it is creating a lot of anxiety, and people looking for the quick fix or the quick answer. And it's a lot of patience, it's a lot of waiting. And I think even for me personally, it's a recognition that this has been around a lot longer than we ever anticipated. And I think about us kind of early COVID and what we thought, right? And kind of where, and now, and just how we're framing everything that we're doing is just so different than, in the beginning. It was much more of a triage approach. In the beginning, and now we're actually having to plan our business, our policies, a lot of things around it on a much long-term basis. So it's very complicated. So I appreciate you kind of being a calming voice amongst a lot of chatter. And let's talk about, while many things have been on pause with COVID, and we've had to shift and do a lot of things differently, one of the things that's still been moving forward, fortunately for this industry, is transportation projects. Those have been able to continue. And
Right.
I know, one of the major ones in for your region, 288, lots of great updates to share with that. And then can you walk us through that? And then if there's anything else locally that's really been able to kind of keep moving along that is helpful to keep that economy moving.
Yeah, it's our 288 project has been progressing, and we are substantially complete with our section. We're kind of waiting on Blue Ridge Transportation Group to finish the Harris County section. We think they're going to have that substantially complete in a couple of months. But they need to be open before we can open. We have to open simultaneously,
Right.
but we're pretty well ready. And I'm ready for that project. We've been in construction mode for about 4 years now,
Right.
and I'm ready to get it open and to serve the public, and to relieve that the congestion going into and out of downtown Houston.
Right.
So I think that will be a great thing to have that open sometime in the fourth quarter of this year.
Yes, that's very exciting. Now, was the timeline able to move up a little bit because of COVID and the ability to work because of less traffic, or has it pretty much been on the same track and on the same timeline?
Well, it's been slow. We should have been finished a year ago.
Okay.
Harris County section should have been finished a year ago.
Okay.
However, I think because of the reduced traffic demand right now,
Mm-hmm.
it has been a little bit easier on the contractors to be able to work with a little bit less traffic to bother them, and
Right.
so they've been able to get that done, and so it is actually, I believe, helped the construction process a little bit.
Right.
And so we should be able to get there. Like I said, we're substantially complete with ours, and I think they'll be finished in the Harris County section in a few months.
Okay. Excellent. And other local projects, or just kind of infrastructure movement that's been happening, that's continued to move forward with COVID, even with the onset of COVID.
Yeah, we've got our County Road 101 project is progressing nicely. The contractor has come in and just is doing a really great job. We have bid out some work recently, and the construction prices are coming in great.
Right.
So we're able to be doing a couple of parking lots here around the courthouse grounds starting
Right.
hopefully sometime this month. We just let those projects last month.
Okay.
We are working on a couple of our TIP projects, obtaining right of way, working on design and moving those things. So we're almost complete with our thoroughfare plan that we've worked in conjunction with HGAC.
Mm-hmm.
And we should have a final public hearing on that coming up in the next month or two. And then also getting our mobility plan kicked off in Brazoria County to look at, because we have had a tremendous amount of growth, particularly in the north central and northern part of the county. And we want to make sure that we can get that traffic to 288
Right.
as expeditiously as possible, so that we can get folks moving and not parking on our
Right.
thoroughfares and our streets.
Right. I think we think about the big highway projects and the bigger projects, but it's the feeders too that need to work as well. It really,
Absolutely.
it's truly a system. I'm going to switch a little bit to a different mode, out of our cars and into our freight. So we know that goods movement was exceptionally critical, and I think we all appreciated and understood even more so, the importance of our freight and our movement of goods, while we were all stuck, during the initial lockdown. Can you talk about, there's probably about, 5 people, more than that, but that I know kind of our go-to freight gurus. I do consider you one of them. I hope that's
Well,
not too much pressure.
well,
Um,
maybe a guru junior. I'm not on
okay.
the
Okay.
level of an Ed Emmett on
Well, there,
freight, but
there we are. Yeah. He's like right here. Right. And then we
yeah,
kind of go. Yeah. So for sure.
yeah,
So
he's good. He's the Gandhi of freight movement.
yes, he
Yeah.
is indeed. So, can you share from your perspective what the freight movement has looked like, the needs that are still there, the gaps that still need to be filled within the veil of COVID, but beyond that, even, kind of where does this region need to kind of move in that freight department?
I think we saw some of the runs on our grocery stores early.
Mhm.
We
Right.
saw some bare shelves,
Yeah.
and we were able to. I think that shines a light on freight movement,
Yeah.
because we have to be able to move those goods and products around, and it's fantastic to see that the way that the freight industry has been able to adapt
Hmm.
and to help refill those bare shelves.
Right.
And so it's the backbone of our economy. Not only, when we talked early on about PPE, we
Right.
also have to get that PPE to where it needs to go, and that is our freight industry.
Yeah.
And so we need to continue to look at our areas where we run that freight, our major corridors. We
Right.
need to continue to look at making sure that those corridors are as least congested as possible to be able to move those goods around.
Hmm.
We need to be able to make sure we have those connectors from
Right.
our ports to
Right.
those major thoroughfares to be able to get those there. And that's one of the things that we've always had an eye on in this region, and
Right.
we need to continue to focus on as we continue to move forward.
Yeah. And I think, in looking at I pull kind of the trucking and I pull that all into the whole system. When we talk about major redesign or renovation or maintenance of highways, and we think of it often as our single occupancy, right? Our using the systems, just regular everyday commute times and things. But it is those Amazon trucks, it is those UPS trucks that are up and down, 45 or 59, that are using a lot of the system that we consider ours for daily commuting, but they were the only ones that were out there. So it was for a while. And those trips have increased, exponentially. And so that is critical. And when we all start to go back, whatever that looks like, it will be interesting to see that shift. But we know that there's still the investment of our roads really it's across the board for our use and for the movement of goods. I also want to talk a little bit about what transit looks like in Brazoria County. And I know it's not maybe the traditional transit that we're thinking of in Harris County or more urban centers, but the more rural transit trips. So perhaps for seniors and those that are not able to, that don't have their own personal vehicles and aren't able to make the medical trips that they need to make, pick up their prescriptions, whatever. So what does that look like right now in Brazoria County? And has that been something that's been easy to adapt to, even more so for COVID, or has that been a challenge?
It's always a challenge because we are, I always say Brazoria County is a microcosm of the state of Texas.
Okay.
We have very urban areas in the north part of the county. The west side of the county is very rural.
Right.
And so, it's the same thing with transit. We have had a partnership with the Gulf Coast Center, with Galveston County, where we've had a transit provider that has utilized, and we do have a little bit of a transit route that runs Angleton, Clute, Lake Jackson, Freeport.
Right.
And we have actually just formed a different transit group with the Galveston County. We pulled away from the Gulf Coast Center because they needed to focus on what they do as mental health and mental retardation.
Okay.
The transit was kind of a sideline. And so we've pulled away, and we've actually got our own transit with Galveston County now. We're able to use some of the federal dollars as well as some partnerships from some of the cities and the county. And so we're able to assist folks. And we've done that for, I guess, about the last 6 or 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
So it does help people on the southern end of the county. There is some transit, and there's also some on-demand transit that folks can get for those one-off trips where they need to go to the doctor, that type of thing. It's not near as robust as the metro system that Harris County and some of the outlying parts have, but they're funded by sales tax. So that is a dedicated sales tax. We don't have that here in Brazoria County. So it's a little bit different, and it will hopefully, as more cities come on board, it can be expanded in the future, but we do have the backbone of it now with Galveston County. They've been a great partner, and Commissioner Dude Payne serves on that board, as well as some of the other members from some of our cities that are monetary partners within that transit district.
Okay, very good. Very, very interesting. So maybe the COVID part was easy because now we're going to talk about session.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I don't know, maybe. So we're all, I have to chuckle a little bit because every session I hear this, it's going to be a strange session, but this is going to be a strange session. I mean, we took it another level. So we're all wondering what it's going to look like, as far as if you're an advocacy group, if you're an official that's trying to move an issue, if you're a legislator yourself and you're seated in the House or the Senate, what that's going to feel like and look like. here at TAG, we're looking at, okay, we're still going to put together our agenda. We're not going to call them asks. We're going to call them kind of options, right? Because we know that the policy board in many cases, not just for transportation, has been wiped clean, because we're dealing with something that we've never dealt with before. And in conversations with the comptroller and some of the chairs of the different committees, there is an absolute unwillingness to make a projection at this point, because we're still gathering numbers, we're still gathering data, and we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this. So from your vantage point, if you could pick some of the top issues looking at session for Brazoria County that you're looking at, and that you're that are top for you?
My top priorities are always unfunded mandates.
Okay.
Don't keep shoving those down our throat, and local control. Those are always my top two. We have 181 between state reps and senators that we send to Austin. We have 254 counties that there are different twists and turns with each one of them.
Right.
And I can say this, most of those 181 people are fairly clueless on how county government works. They think it's like a city, and just like we talked a little bit about a few minutes ago about we're not Harris County.
Right.
Things a little bit differently with the COVID response. Right. It's that way from county to county to county. There's always a different twist. And we continue to send people to Austin that don't understand how county government works. And we are just the vehicle that they can push things down on to pay for some of the things that they want us to do. And then we have no option to say, no, we're not going to do that. Right. And I'm always hoping we will send more people to Austin that know more about county government to begin with, or are willing to learn. And we just seem to have a problem with that in the folks that go to Austin. And so that's always my concern. Right. This session is going to be a challenge because of what Comptroller Hagar's put out there with their financial situation. Right. It is going to be a even more unique session than what we normally get. Yes. And so I'd like to make a prediction, but I can't even predict. There's going to be a difference this way. We've lost the Speaker of the House. He's not running again. Right. Speaker Bonin and Speaker Bonin has done a pretty good job. As a state rep, he did a fantastic job for Brazoria County for the last 12 sessions, and I thank him for his service. He's done a great job representing Brazoria County as a state rep. Right. So with new leadership, who knows? Right. It really, I don't know what the priorities of the House are going to be, and so we'll see. I'd love to make a prediction, but I'd be dead ass wrong.
Well, and I think, looking at, so the local option conversation and the mandates, right? That's been a theme in the last couple of sessions. That's been really frustrating, whether it's, property taxes or other local option bills that just got kind of smashed down. But with COVID, it added this extra magnifying glass on that issue with, what you're saying, kind of each county is so different, and that was highlighted even more through COVID. And so that tension between the state and the local counties and the ability to make your own decisions for your county based on the numbers you were seeing or not seeing or whatever. I just feel like that elevated that issue even more, and just put a bigger spotlight on it. So I definitely think that will be a huge theme going into the session. One of the things that TAG really advocates for and will continue is the enabling legislation at the state level that gives counties the option, not the mandate, to do something. So whether it would be, a local option, $10 on top of the vehicle registration fee to go to a local transportation budget, right? Or I know in Waller County they have a mobility plan now too, and there was comments made that, well, perhaps we could look at a local option that would help fund that, but just for Waller County, but we can't even do it because we don't have that flexibility. Sales tax is another great example. We know those numbers are really low right now for the state. Just about the time that those numbers are recovering is when the property tax, we're going to start to feel that crunch at the county level. And so, how do you provide more flexibility with the state sales tax for counties to be able to use it to fill some gaps? The gas tax, right, not been indexed or touched since the 90s. And there is an education component to the gas tax, so we're looking at that as well. Because when you work with the gas tax, you also can work with education and help elevate education funding. So those are some of our priorities, as well as the equity conversations that go along with alternatively fueled vehicles that are still using our roads and not paying into the fund that really helps
Right.
moving. And so I would say those are our priorities looking ahead. But none of that matters more than keeping the money that we already have from Props 1 and 7. And there's already been some quiet chatter about people looking at that fund, because it looks like it is a very large fund still. And so we are very aggressively advocating that money stays there. It is a job generator, infrastructure jobs, quick job generator in many cases, both directly and indirectly. So those are really our priorities. And I think, but we are so mindful that we know that the legislators are going in with a lot of asks and a lot of needs that are going to need to be looked at first. But our hope is that the message is resounding, that it was our infrastructure that kept us moving through COVID. And it really is the infrastructure industry that's going to keep those job numbers from dipping even lower.
Right.
And we can continue to add. So that's really our focus. And then as other things come on, we all know there's going to be something that takes a stage at some point in session that perhaps is going to overshadow other things. So we're always prepared for that. But that's really going to be our main focus. So,
yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I'm not a big tax guy.
right.
But I believe in you. And if you're going to do things, you do them with user fees.
Right.
And that would be such as indexing the gas tax,
Right.
making sure the alternative fueled vehicles are paying their fair share for the roads that they use.
Right.
That's where, my priorities are with, it's just like our managed toll lane on 288.
Right.
It's there. You have a choice whether to use it or not. If you use it, you will help pay for it.
Right.
It's that simple. It's not just, hey, we're going to put a tax on everybody, and
Right.
and this little grandma that lives down at Treasure Island who'll never drive on it
Right.
has to pay for it. I'm not a big fan of that. But I do like the fact that the people who will use it will be the ones who are paying for it. So.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think that helps bring it back to the local level and brings that conversation back to what's needed locally versus just kind of a huge fund that doesn't have a lot of very specific intention for where the money's going. So,
Right.
Yeah, so that will continue to be our focus. And with tolling too, that's always been an issue, as you know, and it's another great example where even tolling across the state is so different by region, by county.
It is.
Yeah. And to put a blanket policy over it is pretty challenging to do.
Well, you just look at the 288 project. It's people that get on it don't realize it's two separate projects. We chose here in Brazoria County, we wanted to have control over that section, so we retained it, whereas Harris County gave it back to TxDOT. They went out and found a concessionaire that will control the pricing on it. And we wanted to have control over our portion, have control over the pricing, and be able to take the dollars that it generates and put them into future improvements on that corridor. So that was my philosophy on it, and that's the way we're going to continue to push forward.
Great. That sounds great. Well, I want to thank you for all of your time today, all of your leadership and your wisdom, but I'm not going to let you go without asking one more question. And it's my favorite question. I always like to ask a personal question about what this has done for you personally and how this has changed anything or helped you see things differently, been instructive to you in a personal way, the whole COVID experience.
Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah, it has been a change. I'm a little grayer here, but I've kept this, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
You know, I think since this started, since late March, I have been outside of Brazoria County once.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in Brazoria County except for one trip into Galveston County for a few hours one afternoon. I've not been out of the county. That's not the norm for me.
Right.
And this has been a challenge. I think that I have a fantastic staff. And I've got a couple of folks that have not had a day off since this started. My health director, she has been an absolute trooper. And I can tell you this, we hired her 10 years ago, and I really liked her background as an infectious disease nurse. And that has come in so handy now for this pandemic.
Yeah.
To have that expert level of expertise. And my PIO, she has been absolute a trooper. Little story on her. Early on in this, she separated a couple of dogs. So they were dog sitting a dog.
Okay.
She got her tip of her finger bit off on a Sunday evening, took an ambulance ride to Galveston, was in surgery all night long on her finger, and still made it into work by 9 o'clock the next morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And yeah. I had to threaten to fire her to get her to go home. Yeah. So that is the kind of people I have surrounded myself with, and they have been fantastic. Those two ladies haven't had a day away from this from the start of it, as well as numerous other county employees. We've had county employees from other departments now are working part-time in the health department to help out.
Okay.
And just seeing the resiliency and the come togetherness of the people here in Brazoria County that we have on staff has been fantastic. So, but it has given me, I've always had a high respect for the county employees, and even more so today.
Well, and in our conversation a little bit ago, you know, I hear you say that, and I think it's got to be the leadership too, right? I mean, they have to have good leadership, and they have to want to work and have that dedication for a great leader. And when you and I were talking about some of the apprehension about virtual schooling, and you had said that you were telling your staff that it's going to be okay. Everybody's going to be figuring it out. And I think it is that calming voice. It is that just, we're going to take it to the basic stuff. Nobody's expecting perfection, just doing our best. And that was such a great message. So I know that it's going both ways for your team. So we appreciate that.
I appreciate that. And it is, the schooling is going to be a challenge, and my heart goes out to the school superintendents, the school board members that are having to work within the COVID atmosphere that we have. And I'll tell folks out there the same thing I told you as parents. Don't stress about it. Don't get your kids stressed. Let's have fun with it. And I think if your kids are having fun with it, they'll be more apt to learn. And the parents, it'll be a little bit easier on you if you have a little fun with it. And you're not going to have perfection. It's
Right.
not going to be a perfect system, but don't make it any worse than it is.
Right. Very, very good. Sage advice. Well, thank you, Judge, again for your time today. And we look forward to continued conversations as we get closer to the session on how we can work together and figure this all out together. So,
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea. Again, thank you to the TAG members and the sponsors for today's event. I appreciate you having me on.
that was Homeside Chats. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. This series would not be possible without the partnership of our 2020 Mobility Partners. We thank you for your support. Stay tuned for more episodes of Homeside Chats.